Well, it's that time again. We appreciate everybody joining us here for our Berry Analytics Weekly Event Insight Series. This is our webinar series continues here, and we have my name's Eric Missick and Joe Colangelo, who are your weekly hosts. But we have a special guest, a man that doesn't really need much introduction, but we'll introduce him in a second fully. But it's Paul Kissin from the National Confectioners Association. They produce the Sweets and Snacks Expo, and so he's going to tell us all about audience hacking and how they're doing it there for their event. But as always, we'd implore you, any questions you have throughout today's discussion, feel free to put them into the question function here and go to webinar. We'll definitely get through them along the way. We want to have a lively, engaging discussion. So any questions you have, throw in there, and Joe or I will get to them. Also, we do have a survey going on right now, which is called the Return to Live Events Survey, and we're going to put that in the chat for you here, the link to that. It's a few questions to just fill out. You have the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card, and then you also will get the results at the end. So we're trying to get as many people into that as possible, so we have some really good results as we share them with the market and the industry about how folks are returning to live and what they're seeing for their events specifically. So definitely fill that out when you have a second. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who's going to guide us through today's interview with Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. And reiterate, as always, Eric's sentiments. Please keep the questions coming. We're going to take them in as near real time as possible. Also going to reiterate the enthusiasm. Excited to talk to Paul today. We've been working closely together for the better part of the last 4 or 5 years. We're going to talk through his journey as a marketer. We're going to talk strategy, application of data, overcoming challenges. It's going to be impossible to keep it in 30 minutes, but I'm going to keep the flow going and extract as much value from Paul, because he's got a lot to talk about that I think is going to benefit everyone on the webinar today. But first, let's get things kicked off. Paul, do a brief introduction. Let's go through who you are, your tenure at NCA, and a little bit of a background on the Sweets Snacks Expo.
Sure. Well, first, guys, thank you for having me. Anytime that I can talk about the awesome work that NCA is doing, and just how helpful you guys have been to me personally, and to the association and the show. I'm a big fan of Bear. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So again, yeah, my name is Paul Kissin. I'm Director of Marketing and Web Technology at the National Confectioners Association. Please don't tell anybody, but I'm not actually like a marketer by education. I am a marketer by experience. Going back to high school, I was fortunate enough to get introduced to web design and web marketing back when the internet was a very different place. I then spent some time kind of figuring out what I really wanted to do with my life. I ended up in Japan for a few years. I studied psychology at university, but things brought me back to the world of web design and the world of marketing. And about 7 years ago, like 6.5 years ago or so, I got the incredible opportunity to work for the National Confectioners Association, which is the largest trade association for the U.S. candy industry, and the hosts of the Sweets and Snacks Expo, which is the largest candy and snack trade event in North America.
Which is exactly how it sounds. The show floor is candy, snacks, anything chocolate covered that you can possibly imagine. And that is a great thing, but it's also presented its own set of challenges in terms of curating the audience that we're going to get into, I think, in a little bit.
For sure, yeah. We are about business at the Sweets and Snacks Expo, but our consumers are curious about what goes on inside. So we've had over the years a need to make our verification of our attendees a little bit more rigorous.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Who's on the attendee side? What is because it's kind of a buyer-seller show. So who's on the attendee side and who's actually filling the booths and buying the sponsorships? Give the audience here a little idea, maybe some sample companies, things like that.
Yeah. So first, this is Sweets and Snacks is celebrating 25 years this year. So happy birthday to Sweets and Snacks. Originally, the show was manufacturers of finished candy and snack products and their customers, which are mostly retailers and distributors and wholesalers. And that's basically the way the show was ran for 22 years. There's some other groups who are members of NCA who also attend, but they were just part of, they were just kind of observers of the main interaction between the retailers and the manufacturers. More recently, we've tried to broaden what the show's all about. We want to be where business gets done for every part of our industry. And so in the last couple of years, we've launched what we call the Supplier Showcase, which is all about bringing in packaging, ingredients, flavor providers to meet with manufacturers who are preparing to exhibit to share, the latest innovations in their products and services.
And so let's talk about sorry, keep going.
Well, just one other group I wanted to highlight. In candy and snacks, the broker community still plays a very significant role. They are kind of the connectors between the manufacturers and the retailers. And so we've also really embraced their attendance at the show.
And so as you kind of undergone this evolution, refocusing, hyper-focusing, which we're going to talk about, maybe start, because I want the audience to get a little bit more of your journey, kind of starting 4 years ago up to today. How have your role kind of changed, and then how have you also shaped the strategy along that way? And then obviously, we dropped COVID right in the middle of that, so we'll cover some of the changes there as well to accommodate.
Yeah, that sounds good. So when I started NCA, I was their web content manager and their email marketing manager. And I actually got to work under somebody who was, a professional of trade show marketing. And I was so fortunate the first couple of years to watch her operate. And I think she had a great strategy, a lot of which I still use today. But, I think because I wasn't coming from the world of trade shows, I brought my own unique experience. And when I first started, the main metric that trade shows looked at was density as an indication of, whether or not a trade show was healthy. And so every year it was about driving bigger and bigger numbers. And that's difficult. And I think, I took just some of what I appreciated about brands and what I, saw as kind of a societal shift towards quality, over quantity. And then the last thing I realized was that data was playing a bigger and bigger role in the way people make business decisions. And so I knew, or I had this sense that, and actually really, look, the association had the sense that our exhibitors were going to measure the value of their exhibition more and more. The data is available to them. So previously, it was basically like their perception that, oh, we have a busy show floor, therefore a successful show, was now being sort of compared against, well, how many leads do we generate? And how much business came as a result of this? And so I think NCA was just very fortunate as part of my transition to start to really shift our focus away from, trying to generate more and more numbers to focusing on what attendees drove the best results.
So let's unpack that a little bit, because one, I don't believe in luck, and two, if you're talking about now we're going from quantity, it's real easy. Let's get the counter out to now we're moving over to quality. How did you guys, because I think there's some secret sauce in there that I want you to unpack, is how did you guys actually determine what the quality was, and how did you align that with your exhibitor views? Because that to me is the secret sauce.
Yeah. So our exhibitors, had started to really talk about, who it is they wanted to see, or they described successful interactions, and it was always with, you know, medium and large accounts. I mean, they love the little guy being there, right? And they know that that's critically important to the industry. But, you know, being able to meet with a Walgreens or a Walmart or, you know, an Albertsons, a Wawa, though, that's business changing. And especially if you're like an innovative manufacturer, I mean, that is, you know, all you need is one person, right? All you need is one person to come along and appreciate your product, and it changes everything for you. And so we had a team at NCA that really understood the business side of things. And so what they were able to do is map who were the biggest sellers of candy and snacks by volume. And we started to create organizational charts where we mapped who mattered within each of those organizations, from the buyer, right, to their boss, and then the boss above them. And our goal every single year is find these three groups of people from the main organizations and make sure they're at the show. And I mean, the truth is, most of the candy and snacks that are sold in this country are sold by a very small number of people. So if they're at the show, you're going to have a successful show.
So you had 90 people on the show floor. How did you? So obviously you guys had many, many more, you know, buyers, brokers, wholesalers that weren't in that. And just so you guys, those on the call know, the top 90 is kind of how Paul and his team refer to that upper echelon, that upper tier. So that's kind of your absolutely need to have. But then you do, to a certain extent, have to satisfy all the other serendipitous kind of interactions with the smaller, maybe more regional, maybe not in the top 90 kind of fit. And so talk a little bit about the approach there, and then maybe we'll unpack some of the tactics you used, because we got some curveballs on some challenges you faced in the last 2 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was still really important that everybody that's on the show floor, whether you only own one store or you're managing 1,000, you were going to be there to do business. And so our consumers, you know, who we love, right? And we're happy to see, they usually try to sneak in that single store operator category, right? Or maybe even like a medium-sized company category. So we actually started instituting fairly rigorous vetting standards. And with our show management partner, Convex, who, I mean, if you're looking for a show management company, they are incredible. Big shout out. Yeah, they are
Convex.
Amazing. Yeah. They really helped us create a process, which was still friendly. You know, they do a lot of the work of trying to verify you. But it was just really important. We basically had to like purge all of our alumni, all the people who had like automatically been approved, and we had to start from zero. You know,
so we basically created the clear system for approved buyers.
Exactly. Yep. And so, yeah, I mean, look, some people weren't the happiest about having to verify, but what we found was the people that were really there about business, they understood why we were doing it. And frankly, they didn't really want to have to compete with people that were there just for samples. You know, they wanted to have more meaningful conversation with people. And so they were like, look, we're glad you're doing this. We're glad you're making this more business focused.
So let's get to some of the challenges you heard me allude to earlier. 25 years, congratulations. Up till 2021, all of those years in Chicago.
That's right.
By design.
Yeah,
by design.
Chicago's
Love Chicago.
Yeah.
Huge density of your audience in and around Chicago.
Yep,
and then I don't know how many people know this, but you guys had pretty much one of the only materially sized trade shows in Q2 of 2021. And so what was that like? Let's go into that, you know, last year, and then let's talk about what's upcoming this year and in the future.
Yeah. So March of 2020, we thought we were having a trade show in May. I think like most people did. But basically over a month and a half, things changed pretty rapidly. And Chicago announced that they weren't going to hold any large events. And so, this decision was made to cancel the event in 2020. The association and our members immediately had to start thinking about what was next. And it's really a dual track. I think probably everybody on this call can relate. You got to figure out what you would offer virtually, and then, what does the next year look like? Are you gonna hold an in-person event, and where are you gonna do that? Not knowing what the future was going to be for Chicago, we didn't know if their rules about large events was going to change. We set out to find some alternative locations to possibly hold our show, and there was a short list. And where we ended up was Indianapolis, Indiana. And the main reason why, well, there's a couple. Proximity to our community, right? All this drive-in traffic. Two, Indy had invested a lot in health and safety. They had a state-of-the-art filtration system, hospital-grade filtration system that they installed in their convention center. They had established all these protocols, and I thought they just did a really good job of communicating what they were trying to do. So the association felt like it was a really good fit. And so let's see, in July or August of 2020, we decided that we were going to have the 2021 show in Indianapolis.
Which is really a short amount of time when you were going to have your 2020 show. So you guys pivoted kind of on a dime at that time. But let's unpack a little bit the localist piece, because I don't know too many shows that have the concentration in and around Chicago that you had. And what are some of the tactics you did to recruit those folks to Indy?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it was about there were a lot of different approaches we took. One of the very specific tactics we employed was we created a map that had concentric circles around it that showed you what the driving distance was, based on where you were relative to Indianapolis. And I think it was just a really good demonstration. People Indy's not that far away, right? Just hop in the car. We also spent a lot of energy trying to promote all of the cool restaurants and activities and amenities that Indianapolis had, to make it actually say, hey, you're coming to the show, but Indy's a great place to check out. So I think both played a really big role. And then finally, our team, communications team, the association, I just thought that their overall communications around what we were planning to do with health and safety and transparency about what to expect on site was just it was huge. It was huge for the attendees. It was huge for the exhibitors.
So what were you promoting to the exhibitors leading in? And maybe this is just a 21 thing, but some of the tactics that you're taking this year as well to tie together some of the audience composition, tracking, demographics. What does that look like? Because I think on our pre-call, you mentioned maybe one of your most aggressive strategies ever in that space.
Yeah, look, it was really important last year. We want to protect people's privacy, and that continues to be very important. But we needed to aggregate our data and show people the general composition of who was going to be attending. Right? The exhibitors wanted to know, are the attendees going to come? And so by having regularly updated profile of who's registering, how many, the size of the company, the kinds of businesses. In retail, you have something called trade channels, which is grocery and convenience and drug. And
it's a firmographic demographic.
Yeah.
Company level demographic. Yeah.
Exactly. So these are all things that are important to specific manufacturers, right? And so having this, really the Bear dashboard was pivotal in this. Regularly updating exactly how we were tracking with all of these different groups. It really helped reassure people, get people excited, create a little bit of FOMO for the other retailers. So Yeah, very successful.
So moving forward into this year.
Yeah.
So your event's coming up. You've also made some go forward strategic geographic changes. But what are some of the other maybe tools and tactics you're employing heading into 22, coming off of a big time learning year in 21?
Yeah. Well, last year, we learned just how critical data hygiene was. We did a lot of work before the show to determine who was still in business. I mean, it had been a year and change since people had been to the show, and we know that the COVID negatively impacted businesses, and so it was important to us to know what our viable universe was. Doing a lot of work before the event to clean up our data set was something that we will do forever now. I think also, as we move into these different locations, I mean, this was definitely true last year. We had an extended marketing cycle before the actual marketing cycle, where we were marketing the insights that the association was putting together to build leads, but specifically in the area where we were going to host the show. So like we targeted Indianapolis last year with the insights that they were going to get at the show, but we didn't package it as Sweets and Snacks Expo, register now. Instead, it was like, give us your contact information and we will give you a free one-page report on, trends in chocolate, right? And so they gave us their contact information and they got, a bit of value, which they then associated with the brands, gave us permission to market them for other things, including the show eventually. So that part is not going away. That's critical to what we're doing. What we did last year will be critical to, the future of what we do.
That's pretty unique, the content marketing piece. I haven't really seen that much in the event/association world, being employed that way.
I mean, the associations are creating all this content for their members. I mean, I know maybe not all of it's relevant to their attendees, but a lot of them already have all the insights. They just have to find a way to package it. And our team, credit to everybody involved in that. They're really good at packaging.
That's great. Yeah, we got a statement and a question that came through. So one person said, hey, we're based in Indy. We were able to do our 2021 conference due to Indy being so great. So shout out to Indy, Indianapolis.
Shout out to Indy.
Shout out Indy.
I had a few class trips. I grew up in Chicago, so I had a few class trips over there. So shout out to Indy for sure. And then a question regarding, and I think this goes with some of your comment recently about how you're packaging things. But what are some of the key metrics, data points your team's looking at leading into the event? I think is what's being asked here.
So Bayer has helped us do a couple of things. They have helped me consolidate all my data sources in one dashboard. I mean, that's an evolving process, but being able to look at my web analytics, looking at registration data, being able to pull sort of like custom segments. I mean, all of that is an awesome part of the dashboard. Now, the thing that we evolved last year was engagement-based targeting, and we are still in the process of trying to make that as effective as it can be. But essentially, what I'm looking at going into this year's show is I want to drill down into high impact customers, right? That top 90 that Joe referred to, who are most engaged with our marketing that have not registered yet. So, I mean, we're not talking about a specific metric necessarily because there's a bunch, right? It's, email clicks, right? Page visits, things like that. It's also, we have a big telemarketing investment, and it's a lot of the sort of anecdotal information we get from those conversations. But anyway, I basically start to zero in on a list of people that are important to the show who I think are on the fence, right? And then we start laser focusing on them. I mean, pick up the phone, have an individual conversation. But at this point, over the last month, yeah, it's really about figuring out who's most important and trying to convert them.
I mean, the reality is, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Joey.
I was just going to say the reality is you hear Paul talk about this and it makes absolute sense. And I bet everyone at home is kind of nodding their head, but they're like, oh, that seems like a lot of work. But there's no fat on that bone. Like you're one of the, you and the team are quick to jettison things that don't work. And you double down on things that do work, or you double down on the next level of what, like we hit this top 90. Okay, that's good, but not good enough because now we know some of them are more engaged and less engaged. Well, if I'm going to spend $1 to make a phone call, I'm not just going to call everybody. I want to spend that $1 the best way possible. So it's funny when I hear you say, "Oh, we had a big allocation," just because we've been privy to some of behind the numbers. This isn't trade association big. These guys are doing this on a shoestring budget. This is like Moneyball and the Athletics. And Paul's Brad Pitt, I think, is really what it's down to. So that's the nicest thing I'm going to say about you today.
But yeah, I mean, look, sometimes we have the CEO or the COO send an email, pick up the phone. I mean, that's sometimes how important we feel like these folks are. And it's a great way to build a personal relationship. Hey, I got a free registration for you, in the case of some of our VIP retailers. This is a great reason to call you, I'm going to give you something. So that's right.
It's
very targeted at the end.
It's very adaptable. What you're saying, I think, adaptable, agile approach to audience acquisition, that initially, I think with any kind of thing like that, you think, man, this is going to be a ton of work. But once you're doing it, it actually, I think, you tell me, it seems like it gives more of a peace of mind because you see the activity breeding results, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, we have some large segments that we target that we build a plan around going into the campaign. But we don't have that many. Mm-hmm. And then basically, I just allow the data to tell me where our gaps are, right? So like, this time last year, we had the convenience channel was better represented. So then I will just begin to focus on targeting that group. And that happens, essentially, week by week. We look at the gaps, we look at who's most important, and we focus our marketing on them. We still continue the regular drumbeat, the regular cadence to the broad audience, but we'll do some more targeted marketing. And it's very manageable by a relatively small team of people to just zero in on those folks.
Yeah, I think that's really where, the strategy drives the tactics, and then you basically just throw that feedback loop on the end and say, we're not going to be right at the beginning of this thing, but every week we're going to be, it sounds like what you're saying is less wrong, right? We're always chasing our gaps. And at the end of it, you're going to have a positive outcome. You guys have continued to have a positive outcome and seen success. We're rolling down here at the back half of the hour. I feel like we should have made this one for an hour. Really appreciate, Eric, if there's any questions, let me know, but really appreciate Paul and his time today, his insights. We're doing this again next week. We got Chris Bonafati here from APPA. Tentative title on that one is going to be They Ran Out of Lanyards, another really high-performing event. Him and Paul are in a horse race for who's more data-driven, although I think Paul put up a good lap time today. You're setting a high bar. And then we're booked all the way through May. June schedule's coming out. But thank you everybody for joining today. Paul, real big thanks.
Sure.
It's for all those we got some clients on the webinar line today. For those of you that are using, you heard cohort pane, company pane, Google Analytics pane. This is the guy that you can thank for that right there. Oh, Feather pane. This is the guy you can thank for that, because I can tell you it didn't come from the Bear team. It came from Paul going, why the hell can't I see this? So thanks for Paul. I'm sure you're going to keep pushing us, man. And we encourage you to do it. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks again. And we'll see everybody next week.
Talk to you
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.